Well, greetings. I am here this morning with Megan and
Hannah.
Hannah from Go on the Mission. We know Megan as Megan Hess, Scott and Jerry's daughter. Megan, daughter of the congregation, who has gone on to work with Go on the Mission, a nonprofit ministry. And we, as a church family, couldn't be more inspired and excited to have Megan here as a guest with us on Sunday morning in church, to hear about how her life has led her to working with Go on the Mission. Our church is now sponsoring a child, and so we've entered into a partnership with Go on the Mission. Many of you know that Dick Phillips, when he died, left us some money from his estate. And we as a church are committed to tithing 10% of that and giving it away. And so as a part of our tithe, we're using that money to sponsor both a child through Go on the Mission and a child through Heart to Heart. But we're thrilled to have Megan and Hannah, and I wanted to give them a moment to introduce themselves and talk about the ministry and what does it mean for us as a church now that we are partnered with Go on the Mission. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Megan, I would love, I think people would love to hear, you grew up in this church.
I did, yes.
Baptized, confirmed,
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Yes.
Teenage years, youth
Everything.
group.
Yeah, and I had my son baptized here when he was born.
Okay. And tell me your son's name?
Noah.
Noah. And now you work for a nonprofit. You're in ministry.
Yeah.
Can you tell how did you go from being that high school kid growing up at Emmanuel to working for a nonprofit ministry?
Sure. I went to the University of Washington and got my degree in molecular and cellular biology. And I actually worked in the biotech industry for about 10 years. And this past fall, there were some layoffs. And I got laid off, and my husband was wonderful and said, take a little bit of time, just pray about what you want to do. And we have been sponsoring a child through Go on the Mission for 4 or 5 years now. And at that time, the Lord kind of opened some doors, and suddenly there was a position. And having Noah at home, it just seemed like the correct move. And so I took a job because I love the organization. I love what we do. And I was just the scariest decision I've ever made, but probably the best. And so here I am.
So Hannah is with us, and Hannah, I heard Megan say that she loves what Go on the Mission does. Mm-hmm. What is it? What do you guys do?
So the easiest way to say it is that we exist to help children break the cycle of poverty they were born into. So poverty is really hard to escape from, but if you are able and equipped to break that cycle when you're a child, you can break out of it, and then all the future generations that come after you will also have the ability to live outside of poverty. So we do that through, we think there's 3 essentials to breaking the cycle. They're food. You have to have your basic needs met. You have to be able to eat every day. Education. You have to be able to have a good education, or you just can't break that cycle. And then third, and most importantly, is you have to have hope. And we believe that hope comes through faith in Jesus Christ. So that's what we do around the world, and it's really exciting when it works, and seeing kids break the cycle and their families come to faith, and it's wonderful.
Good. Obviously, we're wearing masks to conduct an interview. This is a time of COVID. Everything's a little different. I know how it's affecting our ministry here at church and worship. How has COVID affected the work of Go on the Mission?
On a normal morning, our partners down in Mexico are feeding about 400 children every morning across 12 feeding centers. They get breakfast and they do some worship and learn about Jesus. And since COVID, the children can no longer come inside of the feeding centers, so they bring their own plates and glasses, and they're serving like takeaway. So they come, get their breakfast, they stand in line, socially distanced, and then once they serve, the hardest part for them is going home to eat. They love the feeding centers and really just want to stay and see their friends and everything, but they have to go home. And I think the biggest difference is that currently the feeding centers are feeding about 1,200 meals a day to not only
1,200.
children, but their families and really anyone in the community who is hungry.
Now I know, so we're sponsoring a child. His name is Jose Angel, that we're sponsoring as a congregation. And for us, that's kind of the first step of being in partnership. My understanding is, like, if in 2 years we wanted to send a mission trip group, there's the opportunities for that as well.
Absolutely.
So if someone at home is watching this saying, how do I partner? The first answer would be
to sponsor
really
a child. The first way to partner is to sponsor a child. You can go to the website goonthemission.com, and if you can search in Mexico and sort by a feeding center, Hacienda de Arias, and that will if you find a child there to sponsor, we kind of like for everyone from a given church, it would be great because then when you go on a trip, all of your children are at that feeding center and you get to spend a whole week with them.
And so dollars and cents, what's someone looking at for a commitment, and what are they buying with? I mean, what's that money doing? Where's that money go?
It's $39 a month to sponsor.
$39 a month.
Yep. And, sponsorship, man, there's tangibles, and I'll tell you what those are, but there's intangibles too. So the tangibles are, it provides the food, obviously, it's number one. But it also provides school supplies. Every child who's sponsored gets at least one new pair of shoes a year. You can't go to school if you don't have shoes. And the government provides uniforms but not shoes. And so there's truly kids who don't go to school because they can't afford to buy a pair of shoes. Sure. And so, some of the shoes you see on these kids, to call them flip-flops is very generous. So the sponsored kids all get new shoes every year. They get a Bible, and really what they get is daily spiritual instruction from the people who are running the feeding center they go to. So they're learning about Jesus every day. And the intangibles are that they have more adults in their life who care about them, from the feeding center leaders, from the people who come and volunteer at the feeding centers. And for them, knowing that someone in the U.S. is sponsoring them, it just gives them so much excitement and
that
commitment.
Connection.
Yeah. And when those things happen, it also makes that child much less vulnerable to trafficking, which is a real issue around the world. And so Jose Angel, for example, he's 11, and he is at a really vulnerable time, particularly for the drug cartels to recruit him.
Yeah.
That won't happen. That won't happen in his life because of Emmanuel.
Because they can't lure him.
That's right. Because there's nothing to lure.
Yeah.
He's provided for. He's loved. He has hope in Jesus.
So it's not just food. It's potentially completely changing the trajectory of a child's life. Wow.
That's true.
So we're going to close with a video from Go in the Mission. Anything folks should know when they watch this video?
At the time that this video was filmed, I think we had 7 feeding centers, and now there's 12.
Okay.
So God is moving. God is really moving.
Very good. Thank you for joining us and getting a chance to hear more about Go on the Mission. Boy, we're excited to be in partnership with you. Thanks for coming and making your way to Emmanuel.
Yes,
and
thank you.
We're just really thrilled to have you today. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Gabby Dueck, and my husband Mike and me were serving the Lord in Mazatlan, Mexico, along with our 3 daughters, Faith, Grace, and Joy. The feeding center started 20 years ago when my parents started going into the prisons, and they found something that they were not expecting to find inside a prison, and that was 2 little kids, Jorgito and Iglesias. And they were the most mischievous kids you can think of. They had no boundaries. And if they will keep going through the path they were going, they will end up dead or in prison. And eventually their parents came out of prison, and one day my dad's talking to the owner of the Panama restaurant, and she was telling him that she believed that people were stealing because they wanted food, because their families were hungry. And if we feed them, then we were going to fill that need, and they will not be robbing other people. But she said she knew no one that had the need, but my dad did. And he thought right away of these two children, and came to this neighborhood bringing lots of food for them, but it was a lot for a family. Since it was a lot for the family, then my dad told these people to call their neighbors and get all together, for a little celebration. And then once they were older, then we started worshiping God. We started teaching them songs and preaching to the people and the kids. And that's how the feeding center started.